Thank you, Olanari. Hello, everyone. Good morning if you are in Canada. Good afternoon if you are in Europe, and good evening if you're some other place in the world. I know we are geographically distant. However, I believe that as PPRs or content creators for Toastmasters or even for our own personal profession or business, we might share an experience. And that experience is you spend, let's say, at least an hour or even more on creating some content that looks absolutely great. You put everything in it. Then you go and post it to your social media feed. And what happens? You get only a few likes, maybe 2 or 3, maybe 4. No shares, no comments. Does anyone have that kind of experience? Raise your hand. That happens, right? I know that is a very common experience. And the reason for that is not that your poster is not right, that you're not good at creating posters. The answer to that lies into the fact that social media platforms are extremely competitive. They're beyond belief competitive. And people on social media, when we're all scrolling through our social media feed, by the way, who does look at their social media feed every day? Don't be shy. I do a little bit for work and a little bit because I relax. Elizabeth, you don't? No. Oh my gosh.
Not every day. Not every
Well,
day. When I was PRM, yes.
okay, but most people, anyways, do. Wait a minute. Look at their social media feed, or if not the social media feeds, anyways, we are bombarded daily by information of all kind. So our brain goes into overload. And when our brain goes into information overload, it has an internal mechanism that shuts down information which it retains not being too important, and therefore will only selectively see certain things. Today, we're here to learn how to talk to our brain in a way that it will listen to what we have to say. But we have to, when we're posting, so that we attract the brains of people so that they can stop and look at what we've posted. Now, let's start with a little poll. If polls are ready, are they ready, Olanori? Yes. Okay. The first poll that I would like to go with is this one. How long do you think people will look at, how long do you think they will take to look at your poster as they're going through their social media feed, especially on their phones? How long of a time will they give to your piece of content? Are we done voting? Yes, 100%. So here it is. We have some people who are very optimist. 60% said 5 seconds. That is very optimistic, unfortunately. Even the 3.5 seconds are closer, but they're a little optimistic. The real one is 1.7 seconds. Let me see if okay, I removed the poll. That's why I'm waiting a second. I'm going to share my screen now, and I'm going to show you why I say that it's 1.7 seconds. I researched Meta. Meta is the owner of Facebook, Instagram, WhatsApp, and they do have a paper published on their website that says exactly that. It says in newsfeed on Facebook, we're seeing people spend on average 1.7 seconds with a piece of content on mobile. Now, they do go on to say that on computers, the people are a little bit more generous with time, and it goes up to 3 seconds. So between 1.7 and 3 seconds, that is how competitive it is for attention. It makes sense that we investigate how we can use those 2-3 seconds that we are allowed to actually attract attention to what we have to share. And to do, we need to engage with the brain, because that's who is making the decision. But which part of the brain does indeed make the decision? This information here comes from Neuromarketing. Neuromarketing is that science that is putting together neurologists and marketing people. They have conducted extensive research on the brain. They put people through MRI scans as they were looking at content on social media feed, on websites, ads, all sorts of things. And they were searching to see if there were specific areas of the brain that would fire up when they saw specific parts, specific content. And indeed, that is exactly what happens. So let's go through, let me walk you through two parts of the brain that really get engaged and that we should be addressing when we are creating our posters. So what happens when your eyes land on a poster? This signal is sent immediately to the brain, of course, through the eyes, and it meets the gatekeeper. It meets our bodyguard that is ingrained into our brain. It's called the amygdala, which is part of the limbic system. It's tucked inside the brain. It's as small as a small nut, maybe a walnut or an almond. And it is the center of emotion. It sits there and it looks out for our well-being. It reacts to things like fear and reward. It's active 24 hours a day. It minimizes. It's active 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. It's always looking out for our survival. This is the reason why humanity is even here after so many thousands of years, is because we have amygdalas that help us survive. But what are the things? What is the job of the amygdala? What are the things that it looks for? It looks to process our emotions. It is the feeling center. It can read emotions very well, extremely well. For example, infants who of course have amygdalas can read emotions in their parents, in their caretakers, even though they do not understand language yet. In fact, the amygdala is preverbal. That means it does not know how to read and write and does not know how to speak. This will become very interesting later on when we talk about our posters. It detects threats. It helps us avoid pain and danger. And it helps us seek rewards. It helps us pursue pleasure and look out for benefits. So this is its job. It's always on the lookout for these things, to detect emotions around us, because emotions will, in a tribe, think of this, it has evolved over thousands and thousands of years. Being well received by the rest of the tribe meant survival, because being left alone in a jungle, especially if you're an infant or a child, probably almost definitely meant death. So emotions, it detects emotions immediately. It detects threats in a 2 millisecond. Before your thinking brain can actually make sense of what's happening, you are already alerted that something is happening. So let's take a look now at what fires it up. There are 3 categories of events that fire up our amygdalas. Knowing those will help us create content that will help fire up those areas. So social triggers. The first is social triggers. As we understand, since it's looking out for our well-being, for our safety, one of the first triggers are appeal to safety, growth, belonging, as we would just mention with the tribe, approval. We are out there seeking approval, and avoidance of pain and fear. So for example, seeing a poster that helps or promises to help someone overcome their fear of public speaking, for example, would be something that flags the amygdala that it could be something relevant, important for that person. Having content that demonstrate approval, that that person through that content can gain approval by their tribe. They could be their office, for example, or their family or their circle of friends, that triggers the amygdala. There are visual triggers. These are simple things like human faces, for example. Human faces are a magnet to amygdalas because, see, as babies, we were wired, and this is why we survived, to recognize our parents and to recognize their smiling face, so their benevolence towards us. And this stays with us throughout life. It does not change, even though we've gained much experience. It looks out for novelty. That triggers it because, see, again, let's go back 50,000 years ago in the jungle or in the savannah. If your environment stayed the same, that meant safety, no change. That means you were safe. But what if there was something new immediately? Happened something new? Then you have to be on the lookout. Is it a friend? Is it a foe? Is it an animal attacking me? Or is it perhaps something I can eat? So novelty is a big trigger. Whatever stands out in the visual field attracts the amygdala. Movement, arrows, diagonals, you will see that. Gestures and bright colors, things that stand out. And finally, meaning triggers. Meaning in the sense of benefits. Remember, it's the reward center. It is looking out for what can be beneficial to us. It could have been what's there to eat in ancient times. Now, the benefits, of course, have taken up many different meanings, and we will see that in a moment. But anyways, it will look for relevance and benefits. Here's another pop quiz. Let's look at our own habits. I would like to give you, I think I will give you about 45 seconds here to think about your last flyer or your last poster and ask what element took up the most space. Was it text? Was it people? What was it? You can maybe find it if you have something handy. There's still one person who has not voted. Let's give it a few seconds. Okay, I think we are done. No, 4 out of 5. Sweet. Okay, let's look at the results here. One person said a large photo of a person's face. Bingo. That person already is on the right track. Bright colors or graphics, that is also on the right track. Although here there is a caveat, and that is if the bold colors are there without a human face, for example, or a person, often this is read as an ad. And an ad feels not completely safe because now we're used that ads want something from us. They're taking something from us. So bright colors are perfect if they are coupled with a human face. And the text details, those are not necessarily the best choice, and we will see why. Let's move on. Thank you, by the way, for responding to the poll. And let's look at those social triggers then. We talked about the smiling faces. The gaze is not just the smile, but also the gaze. So when you're using a face in a poster, I would suggest that you use a shot that with a person that looks straight into the eyes of the audience out of your poster. Another thing that I would like to mention here is please do not use those small cameos there. When you put people in those small round boxes, round things, or those square boxes, because those really limit the impact of the person. If you can have your speakers or whoever you want to put on that picture, maybe it's your guests or your club's members, have a half bust or even full figure sometimes could work, but half bust would be perfect. So it's not into a small box, but it takes up a good part of that real estate of your poster, because that person, especially if it's a good smile and a straight gaze, will definitely attract people. People will slow down the scrolling just for that. They may not be interested in your poster. I'm not saying that because you put that in, everybody will click on it. They may not be interested in the subject, but they will slow down. And our goal at this moment is to just stop the scrolling. So human faces, direct gaze, and smiles. We said that the emotional amygdala is our emotional center and that it's great at reading emotions. We can read emotions of these people even though we have no idea of the context. In a split second, we can see who's happy and who's not. Not only that, but we can probably also sympathize. We can also relate. This is the way we're wired. And as I was mentioning earlier, we have what is called mirror neurons, which are cells in our brain that mirror what we see outside in our environment. So when we see a person that's happy, we, for a split second, tend to share that feeling there. When we see a person suffering, likewise, we tend to share that feeling. And so the emotions on a poster can be shown, depending, of course, if they support the goal of what you are trying to convey. We will see that exemplified in a couple of posters. We can even see abstract things like this tree here with hearts and understand emotion that can be tied to a design. Now let's move on to visual triggers of another kind. And here we come to contrast and bright colors. Now, you might prefer the black and white because that's the way you are. However, when it comes to attraction, immediate, that gut feeling attraction, it comes from colors and bright contrast. Big contrast. Again, it's just to stop or slow down the scrolling. It's not to, definitely, people might not even know those colors, but they see it and they're attracted to them. Then we have arrows. Now, the arrows help the gaze look to the side where they're pointing. So for example, we have the black arrow underneath, that's very easy. But what about even the abstract arrows on top, the colored ones? Chances are that spontaneously you look in that to the right of your screen, in that direction. It's harder to look to the left because the arrows are pointing right. So this is an important thing to keep in mind when you're creating your designs, because not just regular arrows like the black one, but even subtle design arrows can point to a piece of text that you want a person to read or an image that you put there that you want a person to really look at. Novelty and what's different. When you look at these pictures, the first things you notice is the yellow boat that's going sideways and the red apple. That's just normal because we are geared to see what's different, what has changed in the environment. So this is, of course, something that we can leverage if we want to make something stand out. It has to somehow break a pattern, like in, for example, in the yellow boat. It's the color plus the direction. And finally, we have movement and we have diagonals. Now, movement and diagonals need not necessarily be, like in the case of the arrows there, graphical. They can also be implied. For example, take a look at the microphone and the lights. They come on down in diagonal. They're not straight, but still our amygdalas, our brain perceives that diagonal there. And also the speaker, it looks as if it's moving and his arm is creating a diagonal, as you can see. These are all powerful pictures that you could be using in your posters because they are subliminal in a way to our amygdalas, cues that it's something interesting going on here. And finally, the third area is one of the most important ones, I would say, is personal relevance. Because of course you can use human faces, you can use arrows, you can use colors. But then when it comes down to it, if whatever it is on that poster is not relevant to me, I will then stop maybe for a second or two and then move on. So relevance is of the utmost importance. it answered the question, the usual question, what's in it for me? So whenever you are creating a poster, whenever you are creating a pitch, whenever you are creating anything, you need to start with what's in it for them, for your audience in mind. It's the benefit. It's the clear benefit that they're going to get from whatever it is that you're offering. If there isn't a clear benefit, if it's confused, or if there's too many, they will go in cognitive overload if there's too many benefits. And you can write this down. It comes from neuromarketing. It says that when a mind is confused, the answer is always no. A confused mind will always say no. Okay, so when you are leveraging benefits, please make sure that it's one benefit only. It could be improving public speaking. It could be conflict resolution, looking good on stage. It could be, you name it. There can be, it depending also on your application. If it's for Toastmasters, if it's for yourself, personal branding, but it has to be one benefit at a time. It's spelled out very clearly. We will see how. Here is another pop quiz. I would like you now to spot the hook in the headline. I'm going to give you a few headlines here, and I would like you to tell me which headline is the scroll stopper. Okay, let's go. You guys are too good. You're too good. You nailed it. You nail your next job interview. This is a very clear hook. It's a very clear benefit. All others are not as clear. The first one, club meeting September 21st to 7, is just information. That's not a benefit. Nobody wakes up happy to go to a meeting. Join us to improve your communication and leadership skills in an upcoming meeting and so on. It does have a benefit there. However, the sentence is way too long and confused. And annual conference registration, well, then again, it depends, because if you are speaking to a very niche, specific audience who are looking forward to this, and they're looking for the registration, so this might work, but not in general. So bravo to all. It's nail your next job interview. Simple, clean, and precise. Okay, and so that's what we're going to be looking at now. We're going to look at the second part of our brain, which is the reasoning part. It is the gray matter, the part on top of our brain, which is the seat of our reasoning and thinking, and also language. It's that part of our brain that decides that, yes, it is relevant, and I am going to look for all the fine prints, all the little details. I'm going to go look when it is, where it is. I'm going to go check my Google Calendar, my iCalendar, whatever, and see if I have conflicting moments during when this meeting is going to be. I have other engagements. So it's a reasoning part. The important thing that we need to understand here is that both the emotional and the reasoning parts must be on the same level here. They must, how do you say this? They must connect. Your poster must connect the two of them. Because if you are able to raise a strong emotion, you stop the scroll, people will look at your poster, but then there is no value in it. The reasoning brain does not find enough information, for example, or does not find enough value in what the emotion promised, well, then you lose. You were able to stop the scroll, but the person will move on. And here is an example of posters that put together the emotional part and the rational part. And also, another thing is extremely important. Since we do have 1.7 seconds to 3 seconds, let's say 2-3 seconds for people to make up their mind if they're going to actually engage the reasoning more and read the caption, for example, and all the fine details. You cannot write a poem. You cannot provide all details here. It's not needed, because the person will only be able to read in a couple of seconds 10 words maximum or less. And also, if you're writing for people, for audience that for who English is not their first language, they might even read slower. So let's say 7 to 8 is the sweet spot, but 10 is maximum. So what you need to do now is make sure that the benefit is contained within that length. To do, I strongly suggest that you look into AI for this because it's really good at doing this. What you can do is just write out, pour your heart out and say, these are all the benefits that we are providing, and explain all the context and details. And then ask the question and say, now put all of that in 10 words or less. Because I want to create a hook for my poster. I want to create a clear benefit for my poster. And it will do magic for you. So I do suggest, doesn't matter which one, they're all good at this. Now, for example, when I was saying how to put both the emotional brain and the logical brain together in a poster, you can have a look, for example, there's conflict at the office one. Our amygdalas spot that there is some sort of trouble in the picture in a split second. And it sends out a message, a signal to our thinking brain that there is something going on there that we could relate to. And in those couple of seconds there, the thinking brain, the reading brain, is able to read conflict at the office, learn effective communication skills. That it can do. It can scan that fast. And it puts together the two things because it can make sense that those two women there are having some sort of trouble, that they may be in an office context. And that text there fits perfectly with the picture. You can say inspire your audience, for example. Practice successful speech delivery. We see an audience that's clapping. Stage presence. We have our champion there who is in a pose that speaks of presence, that speaks of confidence on stage. So make sure that the pictures that you use either elicit an emotion or that they have a person in there. If they can, you're going to have a gaze, a straight gaze is best, but sometimes it can work like in these cases, as long as it also supports, 100% supports the message and the benefit that you are proposing. About the 10 words maximum, let's look here at the big guys like LinkedIn or Google. In their ads, they use this masterfully. For example, LinkedIn, he's got this guy here smiling. He's not gazing straight, but he's smiling, and he does give out this vibe of satisfaction. And the text reads, your dream job is closer than you think. See jobs, that's all. And for the Google ads, they say get more leads and sales with targeted campaigns. Again, maybe 7 words. Start today, big, strong call to action. They use it for a reason. It's because our brains are wired that way. And now, since benefits are so important, they're paramount, I would like to just give you a couple of tips here on how to create a list of benefits. Now, you would need to have one big, clear benefit, as I've recommended already, on top as your hook. Sometimes it can be useful to have more takeaways. So you have that benefit and also some takeaways for the reasoning brain to make even more sense of that claim of benefit that you make there. So how do you create an effective bullet list? Sometimes I see bullet lists are huge. The idea here is to be, again, very succinct because people do not really read the poster, they will scan it. The first advice is to list at least 2 items, because to have a bullet list, you need at least 2 items to keep similar lengths. So if you start with 2 words, please keep to 2 words, 3 words, 4 words. I would not go over 4 words. Begin with a different word for each bullet. For example, in this case, we have verbs. We have grow, discover, meet, expand. So you need to think about your vocabulary. Again, AI, especially for English, for people who do not speak the word right in a language that is not their own native language. This is also AI of very good help there. And use the same word type. In this case, I used the verbs. It could have been a noun, but once you decide which one, you stay consistent. And then as you can see here, there is a call to action. And since call to actions are so important, I would like to cover them, even though they don't belong to the amygdala, but they are still very important to look at. To have a powerful call to action, you need to have 3 parts. Read here or learn more is not a powerful call to action, and we will see why in a moment. A powerful call to action has a action verb, which it tells the person or the audience exactly what they need to do. There are so many nice posters, even beautiful ones sometimes, that lack a call to action because it's implied. They probably think that people will get it on their own, but actually on social media, it's much better that you guide them step by step. So they've seen the poster, they like it, they are interested. Now what do they need to do? You tell them. Action verb, what to do. The benefit, again, even in the call to action, they need a benefit. What's in it for me? And then finally, urgency and clarity. Let's start with clarity, really. So for example, when is this going to happen? Where is it going to happen? And why now? That's the urgency. Because see, sometimes people will say, that's a nice webinar. I think it's interesting. I would love to join. I like to go. And then this is now I'm on a bus though. Now I'm doing something else. I will sign up tomorrow morning when I look at my emails. And a good percentage of those people will never show up for the webinar because they forget. So putting an urgency there, why now, is also a very good practice. Here's a couple of examples of call to action sentences. For example, speak with impact, that's the benefit, and register here for a meeting this Tuesday. So again, there is clarity. There is no urgency here. Direct message us for a free guest pass, our benefit, this week's meeting, October the 2nd. We will see what urgency would be. Let's see, what time is it? If I have time, no, I don't, to do the makeover together. So I will just talk about this. Learn more and link in bio are 2 call to actions which are very popular. However, they're also very weak. And the reason for that being that when learn more usually implies that you have to do something, some sort of an effort, because learning doesn't come free. We all know that learning takes effort. And our brain, who is trying always to conserve its energy, stops in front of having to learn more, unless it's very highly motivated. So how could you help your fatigued brain to want to click that learn more? Here's a couple of examples. You could still use learn more on a button because that works, but then you also want to have a subtitle there that says, watch our 3-minute demo. So you contextualize how much effort is needed. It's a 3-minute video. Or download a 1-page guide. So you will learn more in 1 page. You tell the person, you tell your audience exactly how much effort they need to put out for that benefit. This is going to be a lot more effective. And link in bio is even worse because it really requires a lot. If I want to ask for guest info, for example, on an Instagram page, and there is a link in bio, I need to go to the bio, click on the bio, which will bring me to another place where I will need to click again, and so on and so forth. Most people, you lose them that way. It's best to say, direct message me. For what? And you give them exactly what kind of information or what kind of benefit they will get out of messaging you directly. And now we will go quickly into how people read a page. Why is that important? It's important. It's very important when it comes to deciding where to put text and images on the real estate of our flyer or our poster. Because not all space is equal in a flyer or in a poster. There has been extensive research done on how people read pages. And they've tracked eye movements for 2 decades. And now they have very clear maps. I will show you a couple of maps later. But first, I have another little poll for you. Oh, no, not a poll. In this case, it's a surprise quiz. I am going to show you a poster. And then I would like you to shout out, because I only have one screen, so I don't see you, the answer. I'm going to ask you the question. I'm going to show you 3 posters. I'm going to count to 3, and then I'm going to ask a question. 3, 2, 1. How many of you read the first 2 lines in the sequence provided?
Yes.
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 Yeah.
I hear a few yes.
I saw nothing.
You saw nothing? It was too fast?
It was too fast. I just saw the party thing and I was like, oh, party. And I saw nothing else.
Okay. Yes, this was a very fast test here, but what it proves that we do tend to read in patterns, which are already known. They're already established. That is why I know that you read it in a certain way. See, in Western countries, we're taught to read from left to right and from top to bottom. This is how we're taught to read in school, and this stays with us our whole life. In cultures where they read from right to left, it's probably different. But since we're talking here in the Western countries, this is generally how people read. Top, left to top to bottom. Knowing this, it follows that that part there is where your key message needs to go. Okay, that's it. If you have to put a logo, you might want to use another corner, or maybe tuck the logo to the top left corner, but still keep that very first top left part to the most important message, that is your benefit. I nailed the interview and got the job benefit. Here is the heat maps. Heat maps are the test results of the eye tracking research that they've done. As you can see, where there is red, this is where the gaze stopped the most. And these heat maps show that there are patterns like the Z patterns, the one on the left, and the F patterns that have stood out amongst others. Of course, there is a few others, but by and large, the main patterns are 2, the Z pattern and the F pattern. Let me give you some examples here. These are 2 posters that use the Z pattern. The Z pattern means that we are going to read top left to top. Then our gaze is going to move down across. It's going to go down at the bottom left, and then move across to the right. So the text needs to go this way. Here you can have the logo here on the left, or you can have it on the right. That is up to you. Now, Toastmasters asks us to put their logo on the left, but they also say that any corners would actually do. Again, you put your benefit on top, then the eye will come across the image, pick up on the vibe of the image, and then go down here to see if there is more text, more information, and then move to the right where your call to action needs to be. Because that's where the eye ends, and that's the last space where people will put their gaze on. So that's where the call to action needs to be. That's the Z reading pattern. It's very simple, it's very effective, and everybody can actually follow this. The second reading pattern that we have here is the F pattern. Again, it's top left to top right, and then it comes down line by line. This is very useful in our posters, and I'm going to show you in a moment for Toastmasters, because it gives us the possibility to have a full image or a half bust image here of a person and still have text in the poster that looks neat and have a lot of breathing space. Again, the call to action must be the last thing in this case, and it will go to number 9. The benefit goes on top, some more information goes here, and then call to action. This works perfectly to me. I use it a lot personally in Toastmasters because it allows me to have both text and also a supporting picture and still look very clean and neat and orderly. Now, I'm going to show you a picture again. Again, it's going to be 3 seconds. And then we're going to have a quiz. So let me show you the picture here. 3, 2, 1. Let's do the quiz. Molinari, number 4. The question is, look, the poster that you're seeing on the screen, what is your immediate gut reaction? Okay, let me share with you the results. Here it is. So most people, I would say just about everybody, said that it's too much text and they're skimming past or that they are confused. This is exactly what those 2-3 seconds will do with a poster that looks like this. Now, I created this on purpose, but it is something that I see a lot. Similarly, I see a lot in the Toastmaster space. That is, I see small people. I see a lot of text explaining all kind of details. And it's just too much for the 2-3 seconds that people will look at this. They will just say, too long, don't read, keep scrolling. Now, how could we improve on this? Here is an example. We can put, again, a person that conveys what we're talking about, because here it's about winning arguments, okay? Learning how to debate and winning an argument. So this person looks like it's discussing something. And the question is clear. Do you want to win an argument? That is the clear benefit. And then it goes on to explain, sharpen your reasoning and debating skills, tips and tactics of debating, then some text to join, and then again, guests always welcome. Now, this is a small improvement, but not what it should look like. Anyone has an idea why?
Still too much text.
There's
And
too much text.
The
Yes.
letters are squeezed, and I don't know. I like the bottom parts, very easy to read. The second paragraph, too much. I don't know.
Yes, too
It's
much
all
text. again.
capitals.
Yes, it's all capitals, that's true. So there is some order to this, okay? It's an F pattern, as you can see, very simple, but it's too crowded still. Remember those 3 seconds there. There is another version of this, which is easier to read, that focuses on some of the things that we already discussed, and that is using color, contrast, using color contrast and making sure that the most important part stand out immediately, because people scan, don't read. Like in this case, the win an argument, even if they don't read, do you want to, just win an argument is a question. That is understood. Then critical thinking, debating, and tips and tactics. These are also the 3 benefits, the 3 takeaways. And then we have we say free guests always welcome, which is some helpful text. It can be there, it can also be removed, but it's also another, let's say, small benefit. And then the call to action is at the bottom. That's where it's supposed to be. Join us, etc. Where to join. So we're going from this, the same type of information goes to that. So you can see that in 3 seconds, you might not be able to read everything that's in here, but you already get an idea of what this poster is about. And if you're interested in debating or winning arguments or whatever, you would stop and read the rest of it. Now, here is a little example. This is taken from a real poster that I found online. I have removed everything that pertains to the club, but I've kept the format, the layout. Now, what do you think of this poster?
Why is the word meeting so big?
That's it. That's a benefit. We all wake up in the morning happy to go to a meeting, are we? Do we?
No.
So that's not that should have been the benefit, or at least the benefit should be bigger. Yes. Anything else?
I think the people's faces are not as bold or big as they should be.
I find that too many text styles and just like, where do I focus first?
Exactly. Too many text styles, and also too much confusion. I don't know where to look first because everything's screaming something. Big meeting, big Wednesday, people. There is no order
Different
to this.
sizes. Yeah.
Yes, different
Doesn't
sizes.
really say what's the most important part. Connection and impact would attract me more.
Yes. Okay.
I
So
think when I identify the call to action.
there is no call to action. There is, it says join our meeting. That would be the call to action. So they gave the most important piece of real estate to the call to action, or even though the join our and meeting so huge does not read together. So it's not even a call to action. Okay, so what could we do here? Since we don't have much time, we're not going to go into a very detailed thing. I'm just going to show you 2 improvements that could be done. For example, the one on the left still has the 3 speakers and I have pulled out from that poster what I think would be something that is not really, it is a benefit, but it opens a question in a person's mind. What does that mean? Start before you're ready. And like when we open a speech, one of the things that they teach us to do is start with a question, start with a remark that surprises your audience. And the same goes for poster creation. So if you find a remark or a question that would surprise, remember surprise and novelty also attract the amygdala. So that also could work. And then there is the benefits and then the call to action. The text is exactly the same in the other poster, but now here we have a big person, a big image of a person smiling, pointing to that question, to that funny sentence there, start before you're ready. The reason why I created these 2 is because they would be created for different audiences. Who knows the difference between internal and external audience? Any VPPRs here that know that?
Yeah, the internal is your club members. The external is everybody else.
Right. Internal, generally speaking, is our tribe. It can be our club, it can be our district, it can be our work environment, the people that work with us. Anyways, the people who belong in a certain tribe, okay? It's important to know, and as you said, external is everybody else. Why is it important to know who you are addressing when you are creating a poster? It's very important to know if you're speaking to people who are already familiar with Toastmasters, for example. Not only that, but if in this case, are they familiar with these speakers? Because to invite somebody to a meeting, that is not familiar with speakers, since these speakers most likely are not professional speakers in a regular meeting, they are just members of the club. If you are putting this out there, hoping to attract guests from that have never heard of Toastmasters before, that might not be the best strategy because they don't know these people. They have no ethos. You know what ethos is? They don't have any influence. They don't know who they are. Therefore, instead, this could work, of course, for your club because then they know these people and then it will work very well, or for your work environment and for whoever the internal audience that you are addressing. When you instead want to attract guests that have never heard of Toastmasters, you want to use a different tactic. Like in this case, I put this guy here, which is dressed in a very bright yellow color that contrasts a lot with the blue and the white. And so it stands out, is big, is smiling, is surprised, which matches that strange sentence there, start before you're ready. It creates a connection there. And it then attracts people who are not necessarily in the know about who Toastmasters is, because they would stop and look at this just because of the color contrast, just because of this smiling person, etc., which is obviously a stock image, whereas those might be real members. Okay, so now in this case, they are of course a stock image as well, but because I did not want to use the real ones, but you would see here real people. So it's very important to know who you are addressing. In the case, for example, that you are addressing external audience, you want to be a little bit more polished. Like in this case, I'm going to show you two patterns. The F pattern is on the left, of course, and the Z pattern is on the right. If you are to address external audience, try to attract guests that do not know Toastmasters, you want to make sure that you look professional, because that's the kind of thing that people will, they have to make up their minds if you are worth their time or not. And so I see that the time is over, I think. Nari, I need to check with you. How are we with time?
Yes, the time is over, but we don't want you to stop.
Another thing, then let me just finish this because this is something that I really want to share. And that is when you're talking to external audience, please do not mention jargon. If we talk about Toastmasters, let's not talk about pathways. Let's not talk about DTMs, because to them it means nothing. Okay, let's talk about benefits. What is it for them? Is it confidence? Is it connection? Is it impact? Is it looking good on stage? Whatever it is, let's talk about what they can walk away with. Then when they become members, they will be in the know, they will learn, they become part of the tribe, and then they will know what it takes to do all of these things. But please do not use jargon. And it works not just for Toastmasters, but for anything. Because jargon you can use with the internal audience. Because you can say, Pathways explanation, this webinar is about explaining how to use Pathways at its best, or whatever. If it's just for Toastmasters, they will love it because they understand what you're talking about. But if you're trying to attract guests, use benefits. Do not use features or even any specialty words. And with this, I will take questions. I will stop sharing and see if there are. Why do I always have that? Okay. Are there any questions, comments, something that we can discuss?
Can I ask?
Yes.
So these are the most messages, or what did I get out of your presentation is we're talking about the image. What about the description in the image? So let's say they stop scrolling. How much message do we put into the description? Do you know what I mean?
Let me understand.
Beside the image, let's say.
In the text, besides the image, there is as little text as you can. The benefits, the main message okay, should stay within 10 words or less. Because it has to be a benefit strong enough that will interest the person to continue reading. You have to engage the person to make it interested so that then they will continue reading. They will even go into the caption when you can write a long caption if you want, with all the details, with more explanation, because by that point, the person is hooked. The person is interested. And when we are interested in something, we're willing to put in more effort. But when you're scrolling, and this is what this webinar is all about, is to stop the scroll. When you're scrolling, you're not interested, you're not necessarily interested in what you're seeing. It has to capture your attention. So the image will capture the attention of your emotional part. And then those 10 words or a little bit more, if you add some further information, but not much, will be scanned quickly by the person to see what the value is in what you offer. Do you see what I'm saying? Then at that point, you can, in the caption, write all the information, all the details, then further information that's needed.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Anyone else?
Yeah, Elizabeth has her hand up. Elizabeth, please.
Thank you. I'm really happy you saw my hand because I find in other meetings I put my hand up, no one seems to see it. Okay, absolutely fascinating, Paula. I just am struck by this. I have two very simple questions. First of all, is there a preferable pattern for a certain social media? Is the F pattern better than LinkedIn and the Z pattern for Facebook, or does that not matter?
I think, not just I think, but generally speaking, let's say that for what we do, the F pattern works best.
Okay.
But if you're using a full picture, for example, think about District 91 campaign, Ditch the Nerves, and thanks Toastmasters. They've used the Z pattern a lot. Okay, so they have this big picture that takes up the
Picture.
whole thing, and then they just state the benefit. They say thanks Toastmaster because that was part of their campaign, and then they say whatever the call to action. So they use the top part and the bottom part. That's an F. Sorry, that is a Z pattern. Okay. It can be more structured where you take a picture that goes all the way across, like I did here, and then have a clear text on top and a clear text on the bottom. But the best use of it is really with the big picture. You just go look at their campaign and you see exactly how to do that. And then for most of our needs, I would say the F pattern works best because it gives you half part of if you look vertically, half part of the poster or the flyer to work with the picture. So you put everything neatly in an order from top to bottom. The bottom part needs to be the call to action. The top needs to be the benefit. Even if it's the webinar, it has to be the benefit. Why should people, engage with that webinar? What are they taking away? So that's the main thing, the first thing there. Many times what I see in posters, even ones that are done pretty well, I would say, is they put up district number, all sorts of information, club number, sometimes even club name and club number, all types of that nobody really is that interested in the beginning. If the webinar is offered by one district or another, is not really crucial information usually. It's what it is about and what's in it for me. Okay, then if it's offered by a certain district and so on, it can go at the bottom as more info.
My my concern is that 99% of my posters, if not 100%, would probably fail your test. However, second very quick question. I love your mix of psychology and the graphics and all that. But my question is, when someone connects with the poster, is it a balance of emotion and rational, or is it more emotion than rational?
It is both. It is both. We are complex beings. So we're not such easy to manipulate people. And we are fortunately have brains that think and decide and analyze, etc. The idea is that both parts of our brain need to be satisfied.
Mm.
And that is the feeling part or the emotional part is the gate, what I call the gatekeeper, is the one that actually stops the scrolling. Okay, the one that will attract your attention. You don't know why. Sometimes I do this as an exercise for myself. I go on LinkedIn and start scrolling on my phone, okay? Just like this, not looking at anything in particular. And then I notice when I stop.
Mm.
And I see, what is it in this thing that has interested me or made me stop here instead of the ones before? And quite almost always is something that stood out in a way or another. And it can be people, it can be colors, and it can be something that has nothing to do with me, and I will never be interested in that. But that's not the point. The point is to make sure that people see your poster and stop for a moment. Long enough so that your thinking brain can read what's on the poster and understand if it actually is interested in it or not. Because in the moment that both are satisfied, but the emotional part and the thinking part, then the person most likely will go into the caption and read what you wrote. And that's where you put all your information, all the more info can go into the caption. So one of the things that you can do is, do you use AI?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Okay, so you can use AI. I use Gemini, for example. I love it, but it can be ChatGPT, it can be any other one, doesn't
Cool.
matter.
Mm.
What I do most of the times, I prepare my posters, my YouTube, what do you call it? The thumbnails for YouTube, whatever it is that I'm creating, according to these principles. And then what I do is I feed it to Gemini and I say, please give me feedback according to neuromarketing, or state your goal. My goal is to attract people who are interested in such and such a subject, or for whatever reason, you need to give it the context. And then you say, here it is, you upload your poster. It says, provide feedback. It will provide you fantastic feedback on that. It will tell you, okay, these are the parts that work, why they work, so you learn also. It's not just an exercise, but it's also something that you learn from this process. And what are the things that need to be changed and why? Because I always, like we were discussing with Lev earlier, I always want to know why things are that way. Even if they're giving me suggestions, I want to understand why is that.
Thank you.
Does that answer your questions?
It does very comprehensively. Thank you.
You're welcome. Anyone else? I have a video that I have created with a recap of all of this.
Mm.
And I will send it to Olanari, who can share it with all of you. And I created it with AI, by the way, and it's done a decent good job. So I will just share it with you, and it will help keep in mind a few of these principles. So the next time, Elizabeth, you go to do your next poster, you can have a checklist of things. And then all it takes is just doing it a few times, and then it becomes second nature. It's like learning to drive. In the beginning, you might forget things, but then because the principles are really simple. The principles are really simple in the end. And they are not based on personal experience. They're based on science, because at this point, after 20 years of MRIs and all sorts of research that they've done, the neurologists with the marketing, they know how these things work, how they fire up our brain. And that also helps us protect ourselves, because we can use these to attract, and not just us, but many can use these principles to attract attention because we offer value. But of course, the flip side can also be to attract attention to get your money, or because advertisers like Netflix, Coca-Cola, and many others do use these extensively, these principles. So when we know, what to look for, of course, we also learn how to be more conscious of what advertising is.